actually longer than 20 years, which makes me feel very old now. The canals, very quaint. Everyone understands that canals did some great things in the past, but maybe they don't have much relevance for the future unless you want to walk your dog by them, or maybe own a boat. Well, you know, partially that's true, but canals do increasingly play a massive part in the lives of certainly Londoners, but all over the country as well. They're within, often I think it's half the population is within half an hour of a canal, and just in London alone, I mean, you're never more than, specifically if you live north of the Thames, you're never more than 15, 20 minutes away from a canal. So in the same way as canals helped, if you like, form the industrial sort of competence of this country 200 odd years ago, today's the relevance of the canals very much the regeneration of urban cities and towns, and in rural areas as well. The canals, as we know, to our pain, and Mononbrec in Wales, the Mononbrec Canal, we had a breach just recently, a year or so ago. It decimated the local economy. Local tourism collapsed, the pubs and restaurants and bars, everything collapsed just because we had a relatively small breach. It still cost us £7 million to put right, but the local businesses were completely decimated as a result of the canal disappearing for about a year. Really interesting, the debate we just listened to this afternoon, planning, the impact on planning, and whilst previous speakers may have been dealing with policy issues on planning, government agenda, planning at the highest level impacts on the likes of British Waterways and indeed operators who seek to operate on the canals, because in many areas it's just not joined up. And I think if I have a message for a politician, it's, and I think we'll do your best to join things up, but things have got to, fine words have got to lead to delivery, and they've got to mean something. Otherwise we just read lots of stuff and get very bored of it. We're a public corporation, which some of you will remember as a nationalised industry. We're not a nationalised industry, we're a public corporation. We were a nationalised industry, very much sponsored by DEFRA. We're one of the departments, if you like, of DEFRA, one of the organisations within DEFRA that don't cause them many problems. We're a good news story. They give us £60 odd million a year, but it costs us £200 odd million a year to run British Waterways. And the rest of that, and the balance of that, we earn from our own commercial activities, whether it be property, boating, leisure boating, fibre optics, all sorts of things we earn money from. So we're a very commercial organisation, and we don't ever apologise for being a commercial organisation. But we are 200 years old, and we're still working, very much working waterway heritage. And that figure there, the bottom figure there, the £500 million in public benefit, that's calculated by Treasury Green Book analysis, and of course you'd always believe what the Treasury say. But that's in terms of the benefit we create for society, whether it be free access to our tow paths, whether it be lorries off the roads on freight, and we want to do more of that, of course, maintaining the heritage, the leisure and tourism industries that are supported by the canals, and that can be calculated in terms of public benefit. We also drain half the country one way or another into the man-made canal system, and that's a very valuable resource. Of course, we do also feel slightly responsible for some of the problems we have now. If the canals hadn't been built, if the Duke of Bridgewater hadn't built his first canal up in the northwest, I suspect that coal mining and removal of fossil fuels from under the ground wouldn't have happened so much. The Industrial Revolution wouldn't have happened in the UK and elsewhere in the world, and we probably have a cleaner climate as a result of it. But so we feel guilty, and here's our opportunity to pay something back now, using the canals in a sustainable way. In London, just to be slightly parochial for the time being, this is quite London-centric, or south-east-centric today anyway, but you might be surprised there's 100 odd miles of canals and rivers in the London area, stretching from the Brentford-Uxbridge access in the west, and indeed linking out to Slough, all the way up to Hertford and Bishop Stortford in the northeast, and touching the Thames and places at Brentford, Limehouse, West India Docks, which is all our Canary Wharf waterways. All the docks around the Canary Wharf complex are ours. and indeed we touched the Thames also at Bow Creek opposite the Dome. That's a more familiar map, I suppose, but the dark blue shows the network of canals. You can't quite see the Thames there, but you all know the shape of the Thames, and that joins up the canals at the bottom of the picture there. Again, not many canals south of the river, so obviously there was something going on about the south of the river even in those days. Sorry about that. River Thames, it is the principal artery in London, managed by the PLA, do a good job in places. They need to modernise in other areas, but they are passionate about freight and use of the river, and are hugely supportive of all of the initiatives. But it's underused, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but as I understand it, it's less than 1 million tonnes a year carried on the Thames, and that's pretty impressive in one respect, but very, very underused in another. We all feel it's got 10 times the capacity on the Thames, and the easy arteries, the easy waterway arteries, we should probably be getting right first. Down east, down Tilbury Way, Shellhaven, the new port facility which is underway, that will transform, if you like, the capacity of the port to receive stuff. It won't actually necessarily mean too much going up and down the Thames, but it will be coming into the east, and that is incredible investment. And from there it will be moved, hopefully in a sustainable way, using the rail network particularly, and of course it will be using the main road arteries as well from that major port. Canals today, as most of you will know, very much leisure oriented, and some people say, well, can you possibly have compatible uses? Are they incompatible, freight and industrial use of waterways and leisure use? Well, we don't think so. We still move about 2 million tonnes a year, although it's a diminishing market. It's tough just to keep it at that level. Mostly, I say over half of it is in the northeast of the country, but there are pockets elsewhere of activity, and niche markets do exist, and we are pursuing those wherever we can. There's also, we're using the canals for what I call their techie freight, fibre optics buried in the tow paths, a new industrial use of the waterways, which earns us a lot of money. Very, very important. But 33,000 boats on the system now, more boats on the system than in our industrial heyday, obviously doing different things, but still very, very important contribution to the economy generally, and a sustainable economy as well. Moving freight by water, if you like, we're at the end of the process here. We're at the sharp end of it, and we think we have a real contribution to make. If policy and strategy is right in terms of what we're talking about here today, in terms of waste and how we deal with it, at the other end of the spectrum, how you might move it around in an efficient way that uses our sensible resources, i.e. waterways, clearly we have a big role to play here. Water freight certainly does have the lowest carbon footprint of any other transport mode. And the niche markets that exist around the place, and we've heard a lot about them today, we should pursue them. And we do say, however, that you cannot ever hope to reinstate commercial traffic on all of our waterways. It'd be stupid. There are parts and there are pockets of our system, though, that certainly lend themselves to that type of use. It does need proper intervention, though, in the same way as every single road in this country is subsidised one way or another. It's paid for by taxes and ultimately government grant. Railways every day of the week receive subsidy from government one way or another. Waterways don't. The £60 million we receive, hardly keeps the water in. We have to earn 140 million elsewhere just to maintain what we've got. So we don't receive any subsidy to help facilitate freight on the water. So there's a gap, and things tend to happen when the government take it seriously, the government of the day take it seriously, and intervene. And we all need it. Every private sector organisation would welcome some state subsidy, subject to it being affordable and sensible to do so. That de-risks, if you like, the private sector, who will then follow and make their own strategic investment and make things happen. And stimulating demand is a complicated question. hard to say as well. And we need really to address those issues with government ourselves. Freight Facilities Grant, you've all heard of Freight Facilities Grant, and you know, it's a shame really, it has such a bad press. Often it is underspent in government. How stupid is that, to have a grant that's put to one side for specific purposes to stimulate activity, whether it be rail, by water. I think the rail probably do take a fair chunk of their grant, but the waterways have never really attracted major grant. The fact that it's such a pathetically small amount of money as well, it's never going to make the difference. Recently they have modernised FFG, and they've certainly opened up the idea of supporting revenue sort of operations just to help them get off the ground. So it needs a complete look at that whole area of policy and how government might intervene to really help. It really depends on whether the government is serious. If it's serious and wants to do things, it will put money, it will find money and make it happen. We understand we're way down here in the pecking order, that's the problem. I think people don't quite understand this. It was more joined up in terms of the waste agenda, the efficiency agenda, smarter government agenda. People would realise that this actually supports all of the other stuff as well. From a logistical point of view, canals, I think I said earlier that there are viable locations. Not everywhere, but there are viable locations in the northeast of the country, parts of the northwest, parts of the southwest, parts of London. Not on the small canals, but on the bigger canals, the Lee Navigation, the Grand Union Canal, and obviously around the Olympic Zone. Other logistical challenges that we have with the railway, lack of operators. Those operators are out there, they do great work. A few images of the Olympic Park. I'm sure lots of you will have seen it. Those of you who haven't, we do occasionally get access around the waterways. They're ours, but we use our position to show people around. So those of you who are in the carriage business particularly, you might want to see the waterways close up. Not so much for the present day, but for the next 20 years of opportunities there. Give me a call sometime. Prescott Lock, we built Prescott Lock, now renamed Three Mills Lock, and just opened it fairly recently. £20 million of investment, all public sector, rightfully so. But for the first time, being able to take 350-ton barges onto a part of the Bobat River network that had never seen barges of that size ever, even in its heyday. The capacity of barges was 100 tons in its heyday. So we've done something pretty impressive there. It's a transformational project, and it will last for 200 odd years. Every time 2 barges go through the lock, that will take 30-35 lorry journeys off the road. So we're pretty pleased with that. So it's not being used greatly at the present time, and if you like, the justification of this lock wasn't just for the Olympics, it is for the long term. We do think that in the next 5 to 10 years we could be moving 1.5 million tonnes through that lock and facilitating both Olympic construction and legacy construction. Again, just some more images quite quickly. We do suffer from low bridges. We weren't about to move the Northern Outfall sewer. I hope the guide was looking ahead. Fortunately, that's a Bennett's barge. Actually, Bennett's have been brilliant. They're working with Paul Levesque from Veolia, taking construction waste out of the Olympics, and that's fantastic. And again, Bennett's have invested in barges, not that many at the present time, but again, chicken and egg, what comes first, the contracts or the investment in the kit. No reason to put that slide in other than it's a really interesting image, but we're talking about new kit and technology. Those of you in the waste business will understand what's been going on the continent for some time, and it's beginning to happen over here. The roll-on, roll-off wagons, these MMRCV lorry-mounted waste units, fantastic. You can compact in them, you can do all sorts of them, but the fact that you can roll up to a barge and offload straight onto a barge, and that's just a demonstration project just to prove that it could work. That's a few years ago now, and we haven't managed to persuade any London borough, and Hackney, the target borough at the time, to actually move nearly all of their 100,000 tonnes of waste that they produced. It goes by road to Edmonton. We proved that it could work on the water, and that final push hasn't happened. On the Lee Navigation, there's great opportunity there to move. We think 500,000 tonnes per annum, which, if you remember the slide I showed earlier about the Thames, the Corey contract and other stuff going on in the Thames at the moment is not yet 1 million tonnes. So just on the Lee Navigation, which is a quarter of the size, if not probably 1/10 of the size, can move that type of tonnage per annum. In West London, there's been some fantastic initiatives in West London. Those of you who know the Powerlay plant is built, is operating. It has a capacity of just over 1.5 million tonnes per annum, and again a capacity for 500,000 tonnes by water. It will take many years to get there. I think I'll sell for 50,000 tonnes, but that will play its part in the fullness of time. Very successful. I think they're operating probably up to about half of their capacity at the present time, 800,000 tonnes or so. But it's a real destination on the middle of a 26-mile long pound with no locks. So you might say, if we can't make freight on water work there, well, we're going to struggle in other places. So all the constituent parts are there. Brilliant investment from the private sector there. They put all the money in. We help them get a little bit of freight facilities grant to build the wharf, £400,000 worth of wharf construction. But it was thick end of 15-16 million pounds worth of investment. That's all private sector led there. Also in West London, going out towards Denham, the Hanson-Harleford scheme, we use this as a demonstration project ourselves. We've lost money on it, and you might say, well, why was British Waterways involved in it? Well, we had to. The private sector, Harleford, would not do a deal with any operator because they didn't see any operator was big enough and ugly enough to sue if it all went wrong. So we found ourselves stepping in the middle of a freight contract, just effectively to guarantee it and take the risk. It's cost us a lot of money, but it's proved that canals can be used, and it's been successful in that way. There's a phase 2 that could happen subject to planning, and that hopefully we'll get a bit of our lost money back on phase 2. In policy, I'm nearly finished now. In policy terms, I think successive governments have always supported the concept of waste by water, using the waterways for freight, except they've never really believed it could happen, nor have they put in place the mechanisms to make it happen. The current consultation document that's out at the present time, Waterways for Everyone, which followed John Prescott's very successful Waterways for Tomorrow document from 2000. That talks, and you can read the quote yourself, it talks about canals being suitable in places, and it talks about sustainable transport. It says all the right things. My question always is, what next? Yes, so what? What are we going to do about it? The Freight Study Group has been doing some marvellous work for this government, particularly. I'm sure whatever government will come in, they will continue doing their work. So all the right words are always there. It's slightly frustrating that things haven't quite happened as quickly as we would have liked. George Osborne made a speech the other day, which was very interesting. He made 8 pledges. I don't know if you heard it or read about it. He made 8 pledges, 8 benchmark pledges, all about the new economic model for the UK. And in number 8, bringing up the rear, was all about boosting and helping facilitate the new green investments and green technologies. All the right sort of words he was using, and he's also then said very helpfully he will be happy to be judged by performance against these benchmarks, which might remind me of those in future terms. I talked about the sort of technology that exists elsewhere. In this country are beginning to use them, and this sort of equipment is easily transferable onto barge. So local collection straight onto barge, no transfer, no dealing with loose waste, straight containerised, clean lifting operation straight from lorries straight into barges. Sensible technology. The question bits will follow later, I'm sure, but there's a couple of things I wanted to say here. Today it's all about resource efficiency and driving change, and the waterways are a resource, and they are capable of driving change and affecting change. They're not used efficiently at the present time, and therefore there's latent potential there that we should probably all realise. We think they can make a huge contribution. And Alan, in his opening speech, Alan, you talked about the virtuous circle, and it's not being a linear process. It needs to be a circular process. Well, we think that, and we think that the various transport icons icons that you showed in your circle exist here very much. The transport, sustainable transport, is part of that virtuous circle. And I think we probably owe it to ourselves and the environment to explore it to the full. Thanks very much.